Professor Nadine Peterson, Executive Dean, Faculty of Education. Professor Kakoma Luneta, our inductee tonight. Professor Maruping Mudiba, Professor Emeritus in Faculty of Education at our University of Johannesburg. Senior leaders of the university, members of Senate, and other academics. Distinguished guests, students who might be present here, and all of you who are joining us online tonight. Sanibonani, Huyenant, good evening, Tobela, Ngachilingwan. It is indeed a great honor and a special privilege for me to welcome you to the Professorial Inauguration of Professor Kakoma Luneta. As I do so, I wish to express a warm welcome to his loved ones, special guests, and colleagues. This is indeed a proud and joyful yet landmark moment for all of you. For Professor Luneta, for us here at UJ, for higher education in South Africa and beyond. The inauguration of professors is a public ceremony in which newly appointed professors are inducted into office by the Vice Chancellor and deliver their inaugural address. The ceremony has its roots in medieval university and still serves a multiple of purposes. First is an expression of welcome and entry for new professors joining the circle of colleagues who are already professors. Secondly, it provides a platform for professors to display their expertise in the discipline and showcase their research. In the colonial traditions subscribed to by many of our universities, assuming the role of the professor refers to the gown and the cap. Once we have listened to the inaugural address tonight, the gown denoting the professorship will be formally assumed. Today we gather to witness Professor Luneta's entry into the illustrious community of scholars at our university. It celebrates his contribution to the discipline and ultimately his impact on society. Professors provide a university with its identity, character, academic legitimacy, and integrity. The inaugural lecture is a rite of passage following the confirmation of the appointment of a person as a professor. This evening, we will listen to Professor Kakoma Luneta as the gown goes to town. By this, I mean that the power of the inaugural address is when the expertise is showcased beyond the corridors of this university and reverberates with society. It stands out as a moment of pride for the incumbent, the family, fellow scholars, the university, and ultimately society. In the past, several philosophers and scholars have defined universities using very narrow conceptualizations. For example, the search for truth, for universal knowledge, and even as instruments serving the purpose of the economy or being utilitarian in nature. Through our work and research at UJ, I hope that we can break out of these narrow conceptualizations and reflect on the university as contributing to the public good, working towards societal impact. We may ask then, what is the role of the intellectual? Edward Said, in one of his articles, defines the role of the intellectual in 4 parts. One, as one who commands a vast knowledge of a specific discipline, or one who is rigorous in the analysis of literature, or one who views being an intellectual as a vocation, and lastly, one who functions as a kind of public memory to recall what is forgotten or ignored, to make the connections that are otherwise hidden, and to provide alternatives for mistaken policies. It remains then for us, as a university with a Pan-African vision, to derive our mandate as intellectuals and professors. And importantly, how do we embrace the role of a professor as a disruptor while continuing to be flagship carriers of the discipline? This evening, we will listen to Professor Kakoma Luneta as one further step in the journey of being a professor. This is a journey which does not conclude once this lecture has been given. Notwithstanding, this inaugural lecture does create an opportunity for self-reflective pause in the journey of the professor. Let me now invite the Executive Dean, Professor Nadine Peterson, to introduce Professor Kakoma Luneta. Professor Nadine Peterson. I thank you. Thank you very much, Kalebo.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alapata. On behalf of the Faculty of Education, Professor Luneta, it gives me great honor to read out a very short biography for our audience present in the room as well as online. Professor Kakoma Luneta is a National Research Foundation rated researcher and a professor of mathematics education in the Faculty of Education at the University of Johannesburg. His research interest is in mathematics teachers' education in secondary and elementary school, mathematics, numeric cognition, and professional development and postgraduate supervision. He has taught mathematics and physics in various northern and southern African countries, in the UK and in the USA. He has solely supervised to completion 26 doctoral students, 22 master's students hailing from the sub-Saharan Africa, from Greece, and from South Korea. He has also published 6 books, over 100 book chapters and articles in accredited journals. He was appointed a visiting professor of mathematics education in the Faculty of Education at the University of British Columbia in Canada, Bahida University in Ethiopia, and was once a visiting scholar at Stanford University in the USA, and recently a visiting professor at the University of Cambridge in the Center for Neuroscience Education. He is the founder and editor-in-chief of the newly established African Journal of Teacher Education and Development. We would wish him a good luck with his inaugural address, Professor Luneta.
Thank you very much. Friends, where do I start from? Let me probably start by, first of all, reading the abstract. Then I'll thank everyone else. That will probably flatten my nerves a little bit. The reason why I'm nervous is because my children are here. They have always regarded me as this strong man who can stand his grounds and never shaken. But anyway, I'm just as human, children. Okay, let me start my abstract. Mathematics teacher education. Probably let me start by first of all identifying the title of my presentation today. My title is informed by the fact that I've been in teacher education and teacher training for quite some time, and it's something that I cherish a great deal. So I thought, I had so many titles. I thought, but which area must I interrogate that I'm very passionate about? So I thought of critical perspectives on mathematics teachers' education and development in Southern Africa, addressing the hidden shortage. So, mathematics teacher education and development has been a focus of academic discussion for decades. The irony is that little has changed. In our forthcoming book, Luneta and Schaefer, which is in press as we speak, entitled Historical Perspectives on Mathematics Teacher Education and Development in Africa, 12 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, including Egypt, highlight that one of the most static and under-revised curricula in universities and colleges are those for mathematics teacher education. Accompanying this inertness is the underproduction of effective, resourceful, and competent teachers of mathematics. As a result, there's a shortage of qualified teachers. Those present are unqualified, inadequately qualified teachers of mathematics who are instructionally weak, leading to low learning outcomes, relative as well as absolute participation and attainment in mathematics matters greatly, providing access to careers in areas of STEM and social science and associated personal and economic social benefits. There is a global, but particularly regional concern about pipeline into not only the mathematically demanding courses and careers, but across a much broader range of mathematical functioning, as mathematical demands increases across wide spectrum of occupation, as well as of personal thriving, especially with proliferation of easily accessible data. So, that said then, my discussion will therefore hinge on the role I have played as a scientist, teacher, and scholar to mitigate the muffled representation of effective mathematics teachers in the classroom. In doing so, I'll first focus on teacher education in Southern Africa, in particular, education for mathematics instruction and its implications for the development of teachers' conceptual understanding and their acquisition of mathematical knowledge, misconceptions, and the related errors when they teach. In the interest of time, I mainly refer to my teaching interest and scholarship, specifically journal articles and books, and postgraduate supervision in Southern Africa, to reflect and highlight on how I have attempted to address challenges in mathematics instruction through teacher professional development and the role I have played as both an academic and supervisor. Now, before I do that, then let me make the following acknowledgements. I would first like to thank the following people who have supported me in my academic journey. Professor Andrew Kaniki, that made that important call to the director of the Center for International Education at the University of Sussex. That's why, about why they needed a master's student like me. That opened my postgraduate journey. Professor Shelley Pendrubeli, for accepting me at the University of Witwatersrand at a very awkward time of an academic year. It was in November 1999, to complete my PhD, and Professor Jill Adler for reading that first proposal. I completed my PhD in record time, and I was rewarded for that by the university. At the University of Johannesburg, I would like to thank Professor Vivian Alberts, the then head of the Department of Physics in the Faculty of Science, and later Professor Andrea Stradom, who appointed me as a lecturer for the first year engineering students physics extended program. This program was intended for students who could not be enrolled in the mainstream physics program because of weak content knowledge of the subject. They had heard about my professional development work workshops I was conducting among mathematics and physics teachers in Gauteng, and my work on an Ethiopian World Bank funded education project. I had to develop learning guides that suited this group of engineering students. In my first year of taking over the course, the pass rate improved from under 50% to 68%. By the time I was appointed a senior lecturer in the Faculty of Education in March 2008, the pass rate in that course had gone up to 78%. In the Faculty of Education, Professor Sarah Gravett, the then dean, and the late Dwan van Westhuizen, who offered me a senior lectureship post in the Department of Mathematics, Science and Technology Education, and later moved to start the Department of Childhood Education on Soweto campus. My current dean in the Faculty of Education, Professor Nadine Peterson, who continued to support my work and research in the faculty. At one time, not only that, at one time we had come, there was a graduation ceremony. I went out, my car was locked up, and I asked everyone what's going on and stood there for 2 hours. She came along, said, "What are you doing here? You are supposed to be picking up your children from school." And I said, "Well, my car has been locked up." She picked up my phone, made a phone call. Within 5 minutes, my car was unlocked. That's my dean. Thank you very much for that. It's small things like that that matter a great deal to us as academics. So I would also like to therefore express my gratitude to Professor Maropeng Modiba for agreeing to respond to my talk. Lastly, but certainly not the least, the younger, enthusiastic, and highly driven colleagues in the Department of Childhood Education, especially the former head of department, Professor Ramstorp, and my younger colleagues who have supported me and accepted me as their friend and sometimes an anchor to bounce their ideas on. Before I then continue, I'd like to thank my family, my children, my partner Maria. This is really a very important event, and I'm very thankful that you are here. So, let me then start my address as follows. I'll start this by first of all answering the question, what do we mean by the shortage of mathematics teachers in Southern Africa? In my first academic article in 1996, you were about 3 years old, won't say that. I defined the shortage of mathematics teachers as the inability to fill up or staff mathematics teaching posts with qualified and certified teachers of the subject. It is ironic that the shortage of mathematics teachers in school, not only in Southern Africa, but in the whole world, still persists today in 2024. Among the subjects with the shortage of teachers, mathematics is ranked the highest. This is from UNESCO 2012. I, however, explained in that article that the shortage comes in two main forms. One, shortage due to lack of expert in the subject, and two, shortage because mathematics is being taught by non-mathematics specialists. And this we regarded as hidden shortage, where the tuition in a subject is given by teachers considered to be inadequately qualified and lacking the personal qualities required for effective instruction. So I did a quick Google Scholar. This is going on. Let's see, should I start? But I don't see it. Okay. We should be there. So a quick Google Scholar, therefore, showed us the following. That is only in South Africa. One of the biggest teacher problems in South Africa, and that was an article in 2024, critical shortage of qualified maths and science teachers. The next one, just in one single page, when I just Googled shortage of mathematics teachers in Southern Africa, one came up, mathematics teachers in South Africa, case study shows that the shortage of competent and qualified maths teachers is a key contribution. That was another article. Then another one was by Praise 2018, the factors influencing mathematics students to choose, prompted by the poor state of mathematics education in South Africa and the shortage of competent mathematics teachers. Another one was the shortage of mathematics teachers to be addressed by the Department of Higher Education and so on. So that tells you how critical the situation is. So a recent report by Van Berger, Gasfesson, and Berger in 2022, commissioned by the Department of Higher Education and Training, shows that South Africa will face a massive shortage of teachers in the next 10 years. In other Southern African countries, such as Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Zambia, the shortage is not necessarily the quantity, but the quality of the teachers in relation to their content and instructional knowledge of mathematics. This is by Bethel 2012, and also I wrote about that in 2020, in one of my articles in 2022. Countries such as Namibia, Botswana, and Zambia have reported excess in teacher output from universities and colleges. Malawi, on the other hand, has experienced a severe shortage of qualified teachers, leading to overcrowding in classroom with a teacher ratio of 1:30, according to Spark Foundation 2024. Namibia has regional, both excess and shortage, with some rural regions experiencing shortages of qualified teachers, while urban areas had access to the point that the University of Namibia was lauded by the Namibian government for reducing the intake of its education students. That is according to the Namibian on the 4th of January 2024. What are the identified reasons then for the shortage of mathematics teachers in the region? One of the reasons was the shortage has also been linked to the replacement of retired teachers. So in South Africa, nearly half of the teachers in public schools will retire in 10 years' time. That is according to Van Berg and others, 2022. 48% of current teachers are over 50 years, meaning that in the next 10 years, the department will have a shortage of qualified teachers. Teacher supply is constrained by low output from universities. Universities are not producing enough teachers. Universities are low in graduating students in Bachelor of Education and postgraduate certificates. And the graduation rate per cohort is about 57%, which is extremely low. Not all graduates enter the teaching profession, especially in South Africa. There is a hemorrhage of qualified teachers to other countries such as China, Taiwan, Australia. And according to the Personnel Administration and Salary Systems of the Department of Education 2024, that has been noted. One of the reasons also is poor salaries, insufficient classrooms, corruption within the sector in Malawi, and that has been picked up in South Africa as well. Competition with other STEM subjects has been one of the main causes of shortage of mathematics teachers worldwide, in the sense that not all the best mathematics students are not the ones that become teachers, and that has been a problem. And then there's competition that these good mathematics students are also wanted in the sciences to take up physics, to take up probably other STEM subjects, science and technology, as well as engineering. Therefore, those that end up in the Faculty of Education to go and teach mathematics get fewer and fewer all the time. What about the hidden shortage? The hidden shortage is muffled in such a way that in most cases, let us say a school has only got, has 10 teachers and one of the teachers retires. Instead of finding a mathematically qualified teacher, what does that school do? It probably brings in a teacher of history to teach mathematics. And as far as everyone is concerned, that school has a mathematics teacher. That's a hidden shortage because the one who is teaching mathematics is not a qualified mathematics teacher. So, how have I then attempted to address this? Overall, the shortage of effective mathematics teachers in schools in the region has resulted in a low conceptual knowledge acquisition by learners. And that has increased class sizes because there are fewer teachers as well as the teacher-learner ratio. In order to address the shortage, my scholarship has engaged into tackling teachers' mathematics content knowledge and instruction, supervision of owners and masters and doctoral students, production of books and journal articles in mathematics content, instruction and research, and the commencement of the African Journal of Teacher Education and Development. At every point of my journey, the emphasis has been to enable students to learn effectively. I have embraced teaching both as an act of self-expression of how I view and enact knowledge, acquisition, and dissemination. Over the years, that has turned into what I call the embodiment of me as a teacher, scholar, and researcher. It is from my understanding of what it means to be a good, effective teacher that undergraduate and postgraduate teaching material development such as text and research books, articles, and books rest upon. My teaching has been dynamic and a broad statement of both my perspective on instruction and how I apply that perspective to addressing the shortage of mathematics teachers in Southern Africa. My role as a teacher, lecturer, and now full professor of mathematics and mathematics education has also changed over time. The same goes for supervision. In order to produce doctoral students that are able to mitigate and address the shortage of effective mathematics education, my ability to guide and mentor students who are creative, independent, and reflective mattered a great deal, and it required my own institution, which has been very helpful, to provide the funds, safe academic spaces, as well as physical spaces and infrastructure. The appropriate tools required for effective instruction alluded to the constructivist nature of my teaching are demonstrated in the various slides that I'm going to show. They include illustrations of the concepts being taught, such as those displayed by Mrs. Mutlanga's work, the description of appropriate research-based books and articles, learning guides, and effective instruction, above all, good knowledge of the content that I teach. In that regard, I have been an editor of books, and contributed to a book that I'm also going to show you. And as a full professor, I have alluded to the constant problem that bedevils teachers and mathematics enthusiasts, such as the shortage of effective instructionally grounded teachers of mathematics. And I have asked the question, how best can mathematics be taught so that every child can benefit from its use? The answer to this question 10 years ago is not the same today. My answer then was summed up as follows. My instructional approach and how best I address the shortage of mathematics teachers in Southern Africa should be entrenched in a belief that mathematics can be taught effectively by those who know the subject well and can provide appropriate instruction. That made a point then. I pointed that out in my article of 2022. While that was relatively okay, now the answer need not be only the knowledge of mathematics content and how to teach that, but that the fourth industrial revolution, with its primary characters of the Internet of Things, the 3D printing, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, robotics, cloud computing will be pivotal in the future mathematics classroom in sub-Saharan Africa. This means that mathematics teachers, me included, should embrace the fourth industrial revolution and integrate it in instruction. Artificial intelligence and the use of virtual reality and mixed reality is beginning to take prominence in teacher education worldwide. Unlike the use of traditional environment, virtual reality and mixed reality environments provide novel, natural, lifelike 3D user interfaces, which can stimulate the mitigation of the imagination of teachers, learners, and everyone else that is involved in the instruction. The New World Order, which was propelled by COVID-19 pandemic, provides teacher educators and teachers to rethink both the content knowledge and the pedagogical content knowledge from a renewed epistemological, even ontological perspective. What are the teacher knowledges that are critical to effective instruction? We have, like most mathematicians, we have looked at what is regarded as the content knowledge. That is the understanding of the mathematics that ought to be taught. And I've pushed the point that almost every mathematics teacher should have done mathematics from first year to fourth year, at least at the undergrad. If they have done it at an advanced stage, it's even better. So that enables them to acquire the content knowledge that they ought to have in order to be effective in mathematics classroom. We have also looked at the instructional knowledge as well, which is the knowledge of how best to teach mathematics. And in doing so, I have moved on to look at how then do we ensure that teachers of mathematics that are equipped in the knowledge and understanding of the content are able to disseminate it effectively. I'm going to show you a few slides of how we have tried to address that in both my lectures and also when I engage with some of my students. I look at, this was a lady that I met on the street. I asked her for a name and she said, yes, can I use your name? I said, she agreed. And I said, would it be okay for me to display your picture? She said, yes. I said, the reason that I'll do so is because you are a mathematician. She laughed, and I said, I'll tell you why. I'm going to talk about it. I've talked about this in a number of my presentations because she excited me a great deal. The mathematics here is the mathematics that we talk about in placed communities. So if you look at the baskets that Mrs. Mhlanga used here, my point has always been that well-grounded mathematics teachers of the subject should be able to realize and be able to point out the mathematics in her work. Now, her work has looked at one of the baskets. I pulled out one of her baskets. And those that have done physics and have looked at propellers and so on, the principles in her work is exactly the same formula that is used when you are making a propeller. Unless you follow this formula, the propeller will not work. Now, if I asked Mrs. Mhlanga if she knew the parametric equations, she would have laughed at me. My point here is, unless you are grounded in the content of mathematics, you will not see the mathematics in Mrs. Mhlanga's work. And that is what we are trying to push, both in our interaction with our students and with our doctoral students, of which a number of them are here today, and I'm very, very thankful for your presence. I have now Professor Makonye, who was my very first doctoral student. He's now a professor. I have Dr. Ganakopoulos, who was my second, he was the oldest guy I've ever supervised. Dr. Ganakopoulos is also here. I appreciate you. So a number of my students are here, and these are the conversations that we always have. How best do we train students so that a teacher walks in and is able to identify mathematics? I was observing one of the students a couple of days ago. I think it was on Monday. Our students are on teaching practicum. And I asked her, but you have not used some of the teaching aids. What is going on? She said, well, sir, I couldn't find teaching aids. I said, really? In this day and age? I said, let's start from your environment. And of course, there were many. And these are the examples that I'm going to show you. So then, unless teachers are able to recognize this, it becomes very difficult for them to teach effectively. From Mrs. Mutlanga's work, I'm going too deeper now for those of you that are mathematically grounded. You'd realize that from what she's done, in actual fact, that is a parametric logarithmic equation from her work. This is all coming from, I'm extracting it from Mrs. Mutlanga's work. Now, those that oppose us, that push grounded mathematics, the mathematics within the community, the argument is always that, no, you always talk about simple mathematics. It is simple illustrations. Our argument is that that's not true. From a very simple illustration, you can go up to as far as engineering mathematics. Another example that I look at is, this still comes from her work. You can go further and look at the Pythagorean spiral that is informed still from Mrs. Mutlanga's work. The push, therefore, is our own students should be able to identify the mathematics within, the mathematics in the land, and the mathematics in the culture. The other example that I share with you, which is very common, I found this at one of the markets, and I was intrigued by the mathematics behind that. And if you just look at it, it looks like it's a good pattern. But this lady had to be a mathematician. In other words, she had to obey the principles of parallel lines. If it comes to the rhombus, the opposite angles must be equal for that pattern to materialize. Otherwise, it would not. And I also looked at the various questions that can be asked from that pattern. The other example that I look at was that one day with my family, we were in the Kruger, and in one of the chalets, I look up and say, my goodness me, this is fantastic mathematics. And I took that picture. That is just an ordinary thatched roof. But there's a lot of mathematics there. That is why teachers' content knowledge must be at the top, because they should be able to identify the mathematics around them. So from that thatch, one can teach elementary mathematics, parallel lines, the circle, but you can go as far as advanced mathematics as well. You can go up to 3-dimensional and find the surface area. I remember Paul and I discussing this in my office at one time. Another example that we look at again is a thatched roof, but the mathematics that can be extracted out of that is massive. Different examples. And in one of my arguments with one of my students was, let us start by developing questions then, just from this one simple picture. We were able to develop questions from a grade 1 class all the way up to grade 7, just from that picture. And these were the questions. Find the surface area of a triangular prism. This is what some of the students I was observing today that were teaching grade 7, they were dealing with triangular prism. And the child tells me they are not teaching 8. And I looked up and said, there's so much, there's a roof here. So until we equip our students with the knowledge of understanding mathematics, they will not see the mathematics around them, within their culture, within themselves. And therefore, we're able to develop that. The other one, we looked at the picture of Mrs. Mutlanga and extracted still more questions and looked at it from a very advanced perspective still. The first question was for a grade 10 class. The next one was for civil engineers. From a very simple work by Mrs. Mutlanga. At one time I was in Tanzania and I was driving past. I saw these guys working outside, the carpenters. And I told the driver, I said, please stop. I really need to take a picture of these guys and have a conversation with them. The mathematics around their work is fantastic. And that is what I've been pushing for as a scholar. The ability, especially for teachers in disadvantaged communities, to identify that. The last one is this, which our ladies will probably look at and smile. I told one of my students, I said, how good would it be for you to call one of your children when you are teaching parallel lines and a hairstyle has been done, and use that as illustrations for children to know what it means to have parallel lines. That is the mathematics that we talk about. And the point is that these have got to be parallel for that pattern to look like that. So the weaver therefore had to identify the properties of parallel lines. Opposite angles are equal. All those properties ought to be identified for that pattern to materialize. So then moving to my next point is how I have supervised my doctoral students. I have to date supervised, as it has been identified. I think by the end of this year, this number might go up, Professor Peterson, because this year alone, I have produced 4 PhDs. I would like us to take a moment to acknowledge this. One of my PhD students that graduated on the 22nd of April this year, Dr. Temane, passed away on the 7th of July this year. I was in Australia then. The husband, Professor Temane, phoned me and told me that. So I would like us to take just 1 minute of silence in honor of my honorable student. One of my PhDs, my former PhD student also lost his wife, and I would like us to take note of that as well. And he's here, Dr. Ganakopoulos. Let's take that moment, please. Thank you very much. So this year, therefore, like I said, I have produced four more. So this number might go up, and there's another 3 that are going to be submitting, which will probably go up to 7 this year if all goes well. You know the usual. But I've always ensured that I respect my students. And I support co-supervision. It's very important. It ought to be done. However, I have never been a good co-supervisor because my student will testify. They would send me a chapter at 10:30 in the evening. Probably by 1, I'm sending it back. My co-supervisor might not be willing to do that. So I've always worked alone and worked with my students alone. And therefore, as a result, I've produced really some of the best students around the world. Some of them, I know of one now who sent me an email yesterday that he's just been appointed at the University of New Orleans as a lecturer there. So my work as a supervisor, therefore, has been to ensure that I respect my students, and as a result, they have also respected me. The other part that I've looked at is professional development. I have provided professional development for teachers in the country. In fact, we ran quite a number of programs for teachers until COVID came in. For the sake of time, I'm not going to be reading through that. And I've written one article that has been highly cited on professional development. The next part that I'll probably look at is the books that I've published. these are the number of books that I've published, and among them, the first one, Initial Teacher Education, has been translated into 7 international languages. The ones that you see next there, that is in Spanish, the other one is in French. So these are some of the books that I've published, some co-published, but 3 of them I published them on my own. And the important thing about publications of these books is that they have to inform mathematics and mathematics instruction, and they have all hinged on that. So that's how I conclude my conversation. I do have a social life. I love photography. Maria would testify to that, and my kids. Therefore, I have a website. It's an academic website. But on that website, one part I talk about life, and it's all my pictures from all over the world. I'd wanted to put a video here of myself training in my gym, but I thought that would be pushing it. But I love that as well. So thank you very much for listening to this conversation, and I appreciate it a great deal. Telling me, make it short.
Thank you, Luneta. Good evening. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, how does one fairly reflect on this extensive and erudite scholarship spanning many different but related areas? In the limited time that I do have, I thought it would be more beneficial to develop a response that reconstructs the different dimensions in which Professor Luneta's intellectual formation has occurred by trying to answer the following interrelated questions posed in no specific order. What makes Professor Luneta a mathematics education specialist? Why has he moved away from his initial academic training? Finally, what distinguishes him and what distinguishes his current scholarship? Professor Luneta is at home with mathematics. He is a maths major graduate, and he's written books on the mathematics content, and therefore he is appropriately qualified to teach it and teach others to teach the subject. But for years, he has been straddling roles as a scientist, teacher, scholar, and researcher, if you like. As a scientist, when teaching, he continues to defend the virtues of Galileo's scientific method that provided us with rigorous and logically based tools for inductive reasoning. More recently, he has embraced data science to develop the literacy needed to make sense of today's data-filled world. However, there is a paradox in this intellectual formation, because as a teacher, Professor Luneta is also committed to a political project that is unkind to elitism and the inhumanity of education. This evening, he eloquently and in a very captivating manner demonstrated to us how he seamlessly shifts between connecting subject-based concepts and pedagogic theory to improve the quality of maths teaching. He has demonstrated that recognizing the mathematical knowledge of communities and people is important to understand how they mathematize their daily discourses. Professor Luneta has unambiguously demonstrated this evening that the indifference and perhaps what one might call the misrecognition implicit in the unproblematic promotion of a technicist approach when teaching mathematics creates a false consciousness of competence. He believes that technical expertise alone cannot result in the effective teaching of mathematics, nor an understanding of the conditions under which teachers can prosper. Whilst he considers teaching mathematics as specialized and discernible through a specific and instrumental form of practice undertaken to achieve an extrinsic outcome, he also supports the Aristotelian concept of praxis and phronesis. His commitment to these concepts has given him the confidence to digress from mainstream discourses that unproblematically promote the sanctity of mathematical knowledge and procedures, and tends to context to explain the scientific elements embodied in mathematics content. He employs place-based mathematics to teach students how to engage in open conversations that allow the knowledge base of each learner, be it weak or strong, to be exposed and improved by interpreting and expressing it in a mathematically intelligent way. Through these conversations, students learn to identify and correct inadequacies and misconceptions in their knowledge and make it intelligible beyond their immediate context or historical tradition. Luneta is convinced that the taken for granted use of mathematical concepts in situations wherein the knowledge base is weak further weakens concept images and leads to misconceptions and errors. However, in contrast, effective communication that uses appropriate explanations and illustrations to contextualize experience and existing cognitive levels of those we teach consolidates concept images into the conceptual knowledge needed to anchor pedagogical knowledge and improve instructional skills. To further contribute to the understanding and growth of place-based mathematics, Professor Luneta has supervised numerous postgraduate students and delivered keynote addresses on the subject at several universities locally and on the continent. Professor Luneta also actively participates in the public sphere for educational and developmental purposes. He records his lectures and provides them digitally on YouTube. By sharing his scholarship with the public in this way, he engages with audiences beyond the UJ community to bridge the chasm between the intellectual and commonsensical, and I guess to make himself accessible to practicing unqualified and inadequately qualified teachers described as contributing to the hidden shortage of competent mathematics teachers. Finally, what then characterizes his scholarship? The answer to this question lies in the values that have shaped Professor Luneta's scholarship over the years. These values have pushed him into unusual directions away from his initial academic formation in mathematics and physics. As a scholar, he conducts research and writes on professional development that enables self-knowledge and interrogates unquestioned assumptions and knowledge that facilitate interpretation, reconstruction, and enrichment of these aspects in a mathematically rational and reflective way. To further reinforce this professional development tradition, Luneta is a founding editor of a journal, as he has indicated to us. And he has also spearheaded the introduction of mathematics cognition as a new field of specialization in the research expertise section of the NRF. Colleagues, I don't know what you think, but I'm of the view that we really need to extend our gratitude and great admiration to this scholar for his brave and inspiring work that calls for mathematics education that affirms lived experiences and cultivates an interactive pedagogy as alternative and good sense. And it is a good sense that will make us realize education that coherently combines theoretical rigor and practical relevance. We have a picture here. We have a picture. Thank you.
Honored guests, we are coming to the end of our formal proceedings today. But before we close the proceedings, let me once again say congratulations to Professor Kakoma Luneta for being inaugurated as a professor at the University of Johannesburg. We're going to clap a lot tonight. I know that Professor Luneta, you are a very brilliant man, but behind you, there is a network of very strong support. Me Maria and the rest of the family, thank you very much. This man is a prized, I'm going to call you an asset, not objectifying you. He's a prized asset of the University of Johannesburg. Continue to look after him and to support him. And for the colleagues who turned up today for this special occasion, thank you very much. We all need friends like you. So thank you very much. After this proceedings, I nearly made a big mistake. Professor Peterson, the Dean of the Faculty of Education, thank you very much. Professor Maruping Mudiba, Emeritus Professor of Education at our university, thank you very much for availing yourself to come tonight and giving such a brilliant response to a brilliant lecture. Thank you very much. You are now, after this, you are invited for some refreshments in the lounge area here. Please, let us all go in the and let us enjoy what has been prepared for us. Thank you very much.